I think, okay, personally, I know this is going to probably end up on some sort of snippet, YouTube thing, whatever. But I think that if he took more accountability in any of his actions, his kids, maybe not all of them, but at least some of them would reach out. I think that if he did, instead of blaming the children or blaming how they feel about his relationship with his other wife, or blaming the parents, or blaming gossip, or whatever, if he just said, look, I understand I did blank wrong. I'm sorry. Please, can we talk about it? I feel like that would go such a long way. But also, he blankets statements that all of his kids are against him, and all of his kids hate him, and all of his kids don't talk to him, all of his kids have issues with him. He blankets statements, all of them, where it's also not every single one of his kids, but when he blankets statements like this, it hurts every single one of his kids. Like, he's had past episodes blanket statements, and it hurts me, even though I know that it wasn't directed at me. It hurts when you blanket statement. What's the majority here? Like, if the majority have a problem with the single, it's not like it's a common denominator, and if you're the common denominator that people have problems with, it's probably not them, it's probably you.
Hi friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Friday, October 11th, 2024. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Mykelti Padron, formerly Mykelti Brown, was on her Patreon, and she was reacting to her dad and Robyn's conversation that was filmed back in 2022. This is the first time she had heard this conversation. She did not see the episode ahead of time, and she was very upset after watching what he had to say about his kids and how he was lumping all the kids together. And it appears that Mykelti's once cordial relationship with Cody has completely frosted over. Now, I told you that there was like this rift happening right now. They had pulled their support from Robyn, and they're more sympathetic to Robyn in this specific situation, obviously, than Cody. But what's made clear is that this relationship that Mykelti has with her dad has been bad for years, that Robyn has really been the only person that's been in between them. Like, she's been unable to really have a relationship with her dad. And she basically said that she hasn't been able to have a conversation with her dad one-on-one and have a conversation that's meaningful and discussing her feelings for several years, because she generally ends up upset. Now, something I want to point out here is that she was pretty upset about the fact that he was talking about all of his kids, because at the time of this filming back in 2022, his daughter Savannah would have only just turned 18. Isabel would have just been 19, Gwendolyn only 20, and Truly 11. And so 4 young girls and 2 barely adult women, that were being lumped into all the kids, which she found pretty awful. And she seemed to be most upset about Truly. So if you're wondering if things have gotten better with Mykelti and Cody, the answer would be no. And it seems like everything that's happening now on the show is making everything worse. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, but blanket statementing like this makes people close that door indefinitely. And when he puts these things out here on the show, I get they're documenting their life, and they're documenting history and their story and their relationships and stuff. But when you put things out there on the show like this, there's no taking it back. You know, when you put something on the internet, there is no taking it back. So it's almost like if the show wasn't here and he still had these relationships with his kids, there is a feasible chance that he could repair things. But when he puts things on the show like this, you're screwed. Maddie has seen this episode now. Maddie's pissed. That door is slammed, locked, and it will be shut forever unless he makes a statement on the show condemning what he said. You know, like, that's the only way to get like anywhere on here, is to take accountability on the show.
Mykelti walks this very weird line when it comes to the family, and hear what she is saying, because she's saying that when the kids hear things that Cody says about them on the show, they get hurt, and then it impacts their relationships with their dad, right? So Cody makes statements where he tells all of the kids something, where he says, all of my kids are colluding against me, or all of my kids are doing this, or all of my kids, and it brings all of the kids in one conversation, even if it's not all of the kids. He's speaking about all of the kids. And so that makes the kids feel bad. And so she's saying, well, he's put this out there, and the only way to correct this is to condemn that behavior on the show. I mean, frankly, once it's out there, it's going to be in sound loops, it's going to be in playbacks, it's going to be in tell-alls. There's no really even a condemnation of that statement by him and what he says about his kids doesn't take back those sound loops, because those sound loops are always out there. Like, think about when he said that all of my kids are jerks, and I'm tired of it and I don't want to talk to them, right? All of them are just kind of jerks. I mean, he's talking about his daughter Truly, because he's saying all of them. Imagine you're an 11-year-old and your dad is saying all of you are jerks. That would make you feel bad. You don't have the capacity to even understand what your dad is talking about. But the reason why I say that Mykelti walks a really weird line is because she knows that these statements by her dad cause her siblings pain, and yet she has been in every single episode this season, and she hasn't been paid. She made a joke about how should get paid more, and Tony said, like, what money? What pay? They're not getting paid for their time on the show. And so it's like, why then are you participating in this if you know that it's causing pain to your family? Why be on a show that your siblings are being hurt by? Like, it's the cognitive dissonance of it, right? She knows that it hurts her siblings, and yet she participates in it. And then somebody asked her if her siblings get upset about her participating in the show, and she said, no, most of them don't really care. Some of them don't maybe agree, but it doesn't really matter. But you have to think about it. There's very few siblings that completely boycott the show. I mean, the only persons that we don't see on the show anymore is Logan and Leon. Otherwise, you'll see Hunter periodically, although not a lot. You barely see Maddie. She's shown up a couple times, and I guess she's going to come up more this season because Janelle's moving in with her. You don't see Gabriel. We haven't seen Savannah this season. We've barely seen Isabel. We've only seen a clip of Gwendolyn in passing. Peyton showed up for a very brief second, but the kids really aren't on the show. So I don't know. Mykelti is actually making a point of being on the show by having storylines about her, right? Like, the other kids aren't bringing storylines in about themselves. She is. So that's, I think, maybe why some people are not receptive to what she's saying. But I agree with what she is saying, that her dad shouldn't be putting this out on the show. But I think if you're upset about it, then you also need to take a stand for yourself and not be on a show that hurts your siblings and hurts you. It's like, I feel like they're all stuck in this unhealthy dynamic. Like, it's hurting the family, and yet they keep going because they're afraid of going back to poverty and not having what they had before the show.
Yeah. And
So this was the fall. This was Thanksgiving 2022.
or winter, somewhere in winter.
Summer. It was summer winter 2022 area. So Isabel is 18. Savannah is 17. No, she's 16. Truly is what, 11? He's got 3 kids that don't even have their frontal lobe developed. And I mean, Gwendolyn's barely, like, she thinks she's probably 20, so her frontal lobe is also not developed.
No, she's 21.
Not in this scene.
Oh, no, not in this scene.
Yeah.
I thought you meant right
So,
now.
I mean, you've got all these kids that aren't even fully, like, they're not adults. They are kids. And he's blanket statementing all of them on kids. Like, he's basically saying that Truly hates him when he says this. That's what he's saying. But I don't think he realizes what he's saying either. Yes, children are the collateral damage, but in divorce, in polygamy, in just a lot of things. Because, especially, like...
Well said, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
In polygamy, especially.
When she's talking about the frontal lobe, I keep thinking about Robyn and her whole thing back in the day about the group where they were going to have the kids in a youth group for a church that wasn't their church, and she was worried about their frontal lobe not being developed. So she's really hooked on the frontal lobe. But yeah, I mean, it's true. The frontal lobe isn't developed, which is their executive decision making. I don't necessarily know if that's relevant. They're kids. All she has to do is say they're kids. She doesn't even have to say that their frontal lobe isn't developed. And I don't think there's a lot of parents that discontinue being parents once a kid turns 18. I think society as a whole recognizes that young adults still need parenting, right? I know I needed parenting when I was a young adult, and you don't ever really stop needing your parents. You become a parent yourself, and you still at times want to have someone that you can go to for advice. Parenting doesn't stop because your children are adults. But Cody seems to think that that's the case. But I wonder how this will impact the custody case. I mean, if Cody is on camera completely neglecting his responsibilities as a father and not putting in an effort to see his child, and it's documented. I mean, reality television is edited, and I'm sure Cody could argue that he's an actor and this is all scripted in court. Wouldn't that be hilarious if that's what he did? But that can't bode well because he's making such awful statements about his children, which I guess part of me does wonder if Christine filing this is about money, but also about holding him accountable to his behavior, about how he talks about his kids. You know what I mean? Like, Christine is a part of the problem because she's still on the show, and all of them are. Let's be honest. It's hurting the whole family, and they're all a part of the machine because they don't have any other financial options that they think are good enough for them being able to make it the money that they're accustomed to making. Now, Christine and Janelle are still hoping that they'll get their own show. They are. They even said so last night in an interview with Access Hollywood. They were on a red carpet for an event for like reality TV stars for some sort of streaming platform. Regardless, all the kids are being hurt by what Cody says, and she's making clear that it hurts her siblings. I do like that she's sticking up for her sisters, though.
If it's just my dad and I end the conversation pissed, heartbroken, annoyed, and I call up Tony and I'm like, look, I don't know what to do, but this happened and I don't know what to do. But if I have that kind of conversation around Robyn and Tony's my safe space, Robyn is dad's safe space. So it makes it a lot easier to have open, honest communication, but not feel like it's one-sided. So it's been a couple years since we've had some deep dive conversations. We're pretty much surface level right now because it's hard to have, that one-on-one deep dive conversation.
It is very clear that Mykelti's relationship with her dad has completely unraveled. I mean, she can't even have a conversation with him without having mediators in there. It's like, here's the problem with Robyn. I want to be clear. She's an enabler. She is enabling Cody's horrible behavior. She needs to be in the middle of conversations, mediating Cody because he is so abusive. And so family members view that as meddling, and it is, because Cody should be able to have conversations with children without a third party present. He should be able to act like an adult. And Mykelti says, it's not even safe for me to have a conversation with him because all he does is yell at me. I mean, even when Cody and Robyn were talking, all Cody did was scream and yell and talk over her and not even let her get a word in edgewise. Narcissists never let you win, ever. And narcissists can only exist with enablers. They don't exist in healthy relationships with anyone. And the enablers are the ones that enable them to act terribly because they pacify and excuse their behavior. And so if Robyn's always going to be in the middle of his relationships, she enables it. Cody needs to be able to have the consequences of his behavior. And Robyn's not allowing him to have the consequences of his behavior because she's enabling the bad behavior. It's sad. So I feel bad for Mykelti because she was riding so hard for her dad for such a long time and wanted to see the best in him and wanted to believe that, what everyone else was seeing was false. But it's obvious that it's gotten to a point where she can't even have a conversation with him. And that's, the best thing that she's done so far is move. And I honestly think that she moved because she was in the middle of everything because of the custody issues between Cody and Christine.
It is a bit concerning that he was that hot-headed after he went for a drive to cool off.
What was the talk like before the drive?
Yeah.
But also...
Or in the house. That's intense.
He's only talking about saving his relationship with Robyn. He's not even talking about the kids he has with Robyn. You're the person I love most in the world. I don't think that there's something specifically wrong with that, but he doesn't even acknowledge the kids that he has with Robyn in that episode. And I mean, it started out on such a happy note with the babies.
Yeah.
And it ended up on this heaping pile of depression. I think, though, with like Robyn going back and blaming the moms, I think it also goes back to, Robyn doesn't talk with those 3 wives, and Robyn isn't peering in on every conversation that Dad has with them. So as much as Robyn knows is either what she's experienced or what Dad's told her. So it also goes back to Dad only relaying the bad and the hard parts and him not talking about the full picture. It's also like she can only understand what he tells her. And he's also telling her that the reason my relationships are so messed up with them is because their moms talk bad about me because I don't love them. So I think that's part of it. I mean, obviously there's like things that we don't see and stuff, but either way, it's like everybody just needs therapy, guys.
It is interesting. She did make a good point about how Cody, when he said to Robyn that he needed to get his relationships with her in a better place, that he felt like he was losing her. They needed to work on their marriage, and he didn't talk about her kids. Cody doesn't view his children as actual people. They're just an extension of himself. He doesn't care about them. They're objects. They're disposable. He's got a million of them. He can discard them. He just wants to pretend like half of them don't exist anymore, more than half of them. He wants to pretend like every child he didn't have with Robyn doesn't exist. But she makes a good point about the fact that he doesn't even mention Robyn's kids. It's just Robyn. He is so hyper focused on Robyn to very obsessive levels. It's almost kind of scary. Like, I don't like Robyn. I think she's a huge part of the problem. She definitely enables him. She's highly manipulative, but his obsession with her is disturbing because if that goes sour, I feel like he's like the kind of guy that would do like family annihilation. You know what I mean? Like, he's that scary to me. And then something I saw her light bulbs kind of turning, and people give her a lot of flack because she sees the good in Robyn, and if Robyn was there to fill something in her life, it's going to take her a long time to figure out what's going on in her life. And I say this from experience, but she said that Robyn is being misled by her dad, basically, because Robyn is believing what her dad says. Because Robyn wants to believe that Cody's not a liar and that Cody's not this bad guy, because she's probably decided that this was the good husband, that, the good man that she told everyone that she married, because her last husband, wasn't the good man. And Cody was the good man, the sign of her success. And she doesn't want to believe that Cody's a bad guy, even though it's obvious to everyone in the world. And he's not even a good guy to her. He's not. He's abusive to everyone in his life, including Robyn, including her kids. Doesn't mean I like Robyn. It's just a fact. 2 things can be true at the same time. But there's that aha moment where she's like, he's telling her this and she's believing this and it's not true, recognizing that she doesn't like that Robyn is blaming the other women, because Cody's lying. And then she says, we all need therapy. And I think that's true. And I want to say why. This is just my own personal experience because I'm not a therapist, but I have a parent that is a narcissist, and I know what it's like to spend your whole life trying to feel like you have to be perfect to win that narcissist's love, and that no matter what you do, you're never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough for them. They're never going to be satisfied enough. And there's always heartbreak and disappointment because you almost feel like it's this endless cycle of trying to make them happy, trying to avoid the conflict, trying to avoid the outbursts and the smear campaign and everything that narcissists do, and the gaslighting and the all of it, that you never want to believe that there's not a possibility that they can't change, right? And then you go to therapy, and I did. And you learn that there's dynamics in families that are sometimes so unhealthy that no amount of trying to change and be better and do better and be better will ever satisfy that person, because that person will never change and never take accountability. And when you grow up with someone that's a narcissist, there's an emptiness inside of you because you are craving connection so badly. You want your parent to love you unconditionally, and you will never be loved unconditionally by that parent. And so you spend a lot of time of your life trying to get that parent to love you, to see you, to value you, to want to know you, and to respect you, and to look at you as something other than an extension of themselves. And it affects your self-esteem, and it impacts your feelings about yourself, because their stories about you circle in your head about what you're not good enough and you're not smart enough, and it's always your fault, and you're the one that's difficult, and no one will ever want to marry you, and no one would ever want to be your friend, and the stories the narcissist tells you to devalue you, to keep you unstable, and to keep you under their control. And when I went to therapy, I finally was able to realize that these were not my stories. They were their stories about me that weren't true. And it was being done to me to make me dependent upon them and to make them accept the bad behavior. Because if I became independent of them and I actually called out their behavior, they couldn't do what they were doing to me anymore. They couldn't use me for what they needed. And when I finally stood up to them, it didn't go well. And then I became the target. And then everyone in my family became too scared, didn't want to rock the boat, and I became the scapegoat. And once that happened, the only thing I knew how to do was walk out the door. Because narcissists always have enablers. They always have children that are the golden child, the ones that they value more than others, and they always have a scapegoat. And Cody is scapegoating every one of his children that are not being loyal to him. And he's overvaluing Robyn's children as the golden children. And the golden children and the scapegoats are pit against each other. They'll never have good relationships. Siblings that grow up with narcissistic parents have very uncomfortable relationships. If there's only a couple of them, they may not even be friends or even talk. They are so lucky that they have strong mothers that are trying to outdo what Cody has done and trying to foster good relationships with each other now and trying to undo some of that damage. But the scars that these kids have are long standing and will always be there. And therapy is the only way that they'll be able to actually learn what narcissistic abuse is. They'll start to learn that the feelings they're having, the stories they're told about them are not true. And they'll start to realize that, like, all the narcissist was doing was telling each one of them stories to make each other hate each other so that everyone would be fighting with each other. And then the narcissist can do what the narcissist wants to do, and they're not fighting with him or her. So they do need therapy. And it changed my life. And I hope they can get it for themselves, because sometimes the best thing you can do with a narcissist is cut off their supply and pretend like they don't exist. And that's what Cody needs. He needs his family members that he's treating poorly like this to just pretend like he doesn't even exist and not react. And that's why, honestly, they should get off a show with him, because as long as they're giving him any reaction, he gets what he wants, because he can blame someone else, he can devalue someone else, and he can stay superior. Even though he looks like he's like the biggest loser on the planet, he probably still feels like he's justified in his anger and that he still can blame them. It's sad. So, what are your thoughts? Are you surprised to see Mykelti lashing out? I hope she gets therapy. I actually hope all of them get therapy. Do you think Cody and Robyn will ever talk to her again? I think things are about to change. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Bye, everyone.